Title of the sermon today is A Blessed Fugitive. I have preached the Jacob series 2 times about a month, 2 months ago. This is the third time I talk about Jacob. So let's go back to the story of Jacob. But before that, let me ask you a question. What would you expect to do if you are, when you reach to your 70s? Like none of us reached to 70s yet. So imagine, what would you like to do? Probably you already, when you reach to 70s, you already retired and doing the things that you couldn't do while you're working because of busy schedule. Or you spend a lot of time with your grandkids. Maybe not. Ex-president of our conference, he shared the oldest granddaughter's story when he decided to retire. And when the news of his retirement was shared with his family members, he had some grandkids. And the oldest one said to him, "Grandpa, you know what? After you retired, I'm going to make a schedule for you. So you can visit me and my nephew, my niece, but I'm the one who is going to make a schedule for you." So it was kind of interesting. It means like when grandparents, when they retire, it seems like they're spending a lot of time with grandkids. For me, I like to find myself volunteering somewhere in the world as a missionary in my 70s. I hope I'm still strong enough to God's work. What about Jacob, the Bible character? What was he doing in his 70s? We remember when he cheated his father and left home, it was his 70s. He was in his 70s. So he cheated his father and his twin brother, and following his mother's scheme. And his twin brother was so angry and plotted to kill him, after father's death. So once again, following his mother's suggestion, he left home and go to his uncle's place, and who lived in another country. So he left home as a fugitive. And another purpose was finding a wife for him. He was still single at the time. But in order to understand this situation better and make fair for Jacob, we need to consider a different lifespan between Jacob's time and our time. How many of you know how long did Jacob live? When did he die? When he was 147. Yeah, he lived to 147 years. So considering lifespan today, let's say 100 in today's lifespan, it's safe to think that he was in his 50s. Okay, like I think about my age. So it could be fair for Jacob to think that way. He was not a really elderly man when he left home as a fugitive, but he was a middle-aged man. Anyway, his departure was not luxurious. He walked alone. Do you remember the story when Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac? And the servant left with how many donkeys? I think 10, not donkeys, 10 camels. So camel can load a lot of things on the camel's back. So he carried a lot of good gifts from Abraham. It's a luxurious one and with a lot of gifts. But compared to that journey, Jacob's one was humble and I can say also miserable. And think about, what did Jacob think as he left his father's house? I don't know what time he left, but he was deeply troubled, right? He was deeply troubled. He was deadly lonely. and he was a loser. Definitely he was a loser. And he was a middle-aged man without maturity. He blamed himself for his deceitfulness, and every step he took, he felt more miserable. And he could feel that he was traveling to deeper and deeper darkness. And eventually he reached to a certain place and stayed the night there since the sun was already set. And so we can see he was camping alone in the wilderness. Sounds interesting? Exciting? Camping alone in the wilderness? But like Jacob's camping is not camping we go. It's a different kind of camping. So he slept in the wilderness without a tent, and he covered his body with outerwear. That's what they do. During the outerwear was a blanket when they slept. And stone was his pillow. How many of you use stone as a pillow? It's very uncomfortable, I guess. And but yes, it would still be fun if you do it as a leisure. And if you like it, you can say it's fun. But he was a fugitive. He didn't take a vacation, but he was a fugitive. And so he went to sleep. Then Genesis 28 verse 12 says, and he dreamed. A stairway was set on the ground, and it reached all the way to the sky. Angels of God were going up, going down on it. Then what happened after that? God appeared to him and said, the same chapter, verses 13 to 15, then God was right before him. Imagine, as I read those verses, try to draw a picture. And while he was sleeping and laying on the ground and stone pillow, and God appeared just before him, and he said, I am God. The God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac. And he said, I'm giving the ground on which you are sleeping to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will be as the dust of the earth. They will stretch from west to east, from north to south. All the families of the earth will bless themselves in you and your descendants. Yes, I will stay with you. I will protect you wherever you go. Amazing, right? And he said, I will bring you back to this very ground. I will stick with you until I've done everything I promised you. Wait a minute. Do you understand the situation here? What God was doing? He blessed Jacob. Not only casual blessing, but he would be the father of a nation. But not only nation, but the whole world would be blessed through him and his descendants. So, do you understand the situation here? I don't understand. After what all Jacob had done, deceiving, and he left home as a fugitive, and suddenly God appeared to him and said, I will bless you, and your descendants will be blessed, and the whole world will be blessed. That's what God does. Yeah? So in order to be blessed, you need to deceive your brothers. Right? Deceive your father and leave home. Then God will appear to you and will bless you. Is that right? Yes or no? So there should be a missing story between, arriving at a certain place and went to sleep. So something happened between them. Otherwise, I cannot understand what God was doing. And the book, The Patriarch and Prophets, fills the gap and helps us understand this event better and clearer. So it was the second evening since he left his father's house. And as darkness pressed upon his soul, he felt the need of protection from God, as he had never felt it before. So I'm reading a quote from the Patriarchs and Prophets. Read, with weeping and deep humiliation, he confessed his sin. That's right? Something happened. And are entreated for some evidence that he was not utterly forsaken. Still, his burdened heart found no relief. He had lost all confidence in himself, and he feared that God, with his fathers, had cast him off. So he repented. He was seeking God's protection and guidance, but he didn't have assurance. So with a burdened heart, deep trouble, he went to sleep. That night, listen carefully, that night, maybe the first time in his life, Jacob knew who he was. It was like having a spiritual MRI. Because of his deceitful life, he was not able to see true Jacob. I don't remember her name, but once I read an article about one of the actresses in Hollywood, and while she was having an interview, she said, sometimes I confuse myself who I am, because of many different roles that she acted. Sometimes she was confused who she was. When you aren't true to yourself and to others, you begin to have two selves. One is true yourself, and the other is false you. So that night, when Jacob hit the bottom of his life, false Jacob was broken into pieces. And true Jacob was revealed. It would make him more miserable when his true self was revealed. But remember, it was the only place that he could come to God with a true heart. When false Jacob was broken into pieces, that was the moment that Jacob could go to God with a true heart. Jacob felt helpless. He realized that nothing he could do. So he admitted that God can only save him. So even though he confessed his sin, he didn't know what to do next. And he didn't have any assurance of forgiveness. With desperation and broken heart, he fell to sleep. As I was preparing today's sermon, I have tried to draw a picture of Jacob who was lying down on the ground, dark night, and stone was his pillow, and probably teardrops on his chin, on his face, and with a broken heart. He was just looking at the sky. But suddenly, as I would try to draw a picture of Jacob, suddenly I found myself at Jacob's place. Not Jacob, but I found myself was laying down in the wilderness with a stone pillow, with a desperation. Now I have seen my desperation for God's intervention into my life. dear friends, if you have felt like Jacob, if your life situation is like Jacob's, listen carefully what God tells you. You are not going to be there forever. God will bless you and fulfill His promises. Amen. He will guide you and protect you. Then if you have hit the bottom, that's it. That's the place that you can clearly see God and yourself. So Jacob woke up from his sleep. After seeing the letter and angels going up and down, after God appeared and told him, he was so amazing, he woke up middle of the night. And how awesome feeling would he have as he woke up? I like to wake up even 10,000 times in the middle of the night. After seeing God speaking to me with such blessings. But that's what Jacob experienced. So he met God and he got assurance of God's guidance and protection and bring him back to his father's land. So I wish I had that dream that Jacob had. And what did he do after waking up from his sleep? Genesis 28 verse 17 says, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. And this is the gate of heaven." Can you imagine the same place, before the dream, he was broken. He was desperate. He was hopeless. Now everything was so dark, he couldn't see any future for him. The same place. After God's intervention, after God's appearance, after God's blessing, he said, "How awesome is this place?" The place was the most miserable place, right? He was broken into piece by piece. But after meeting God, he said, "How awesome is this place?" Dear brothers and sisters, we can experience what Jacob experienced. We can say how awesome my life is. Would you repeat after me? You don't have to unmute, but say how awesome my life is. You can say how awesome my family is. How awesome my work is. How awesome my church is. God can fix everything and make it awesome. Do you believe that? Then he went back to sleep again. So that night he had 2 sleeps. But those 2 sleeps are very heaven and earth different, heaven and hell different. First sleep he fell to sleep with a broken heart. But second sleep, he went to bed with a hopeful heart, peace and joy. That sleep could be the most relaxed and the happiest one for Jacob. How often do you feel this way when you go to bed? I'm asking you a question. How often do you feel this way? I'm so relaxed, I'm so happy, I'm so hopeful, I have great peace in my heart. Wow, let me go to sleep. How often do you go to sleep that way? Or how often do you go to bed with a sigh, grief and fear and worry? We can have the sweetest sleep that Jacob had. Going to bed with a peace and grateful heart sounds awesome, isn't it? So after the sweetest night, morning came. Genesis chapter 28, verses 18 to 19, read, Then Jacob rose early in the morning, and took the stone that he had put on at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it, and he called the name of the place Bethel, which means house of God. So the most miserable place became the house of God. Then he made a vow. Genesis chapter 28, verses 20-21, read, If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat, clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you. So he went to bed as a fugitive. But he woke up as God's chosen one to carry blessing. He went to bed as a broken Jacob. But he woke up as new Jacob. God's presence, experiencing God, changed a fugitive to a blesser. Broken heart to the most blessed one. However, it was just a beginning. With just one incident, he couldn't fully experience God. It was too early to say, Lord, you are my God. That's why Jacob said, after such thing, and then you will be my God. But he was studying God as his father's God. So he didn't want to be deceptive anymore. So he was very cautious. So, dear friends, following God isn't having some events. Okay? It's not events. It's like a lifetime journey. So whether you are down or up, whether you hit the bottom or fly in the sky, you can experience Him. However, His presence is most recognizable when you feel like you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. God's presence is more recognizable than you walk through the green pasture. So let me read one more Bible verses for you, and it may be your testimony. Psalms chapter 46 verses 1-3. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roll and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. God bless you. Amen.